Greetings duelists and welcome to another video. So today I'm going to do a continuation of another video that I did, which sadly did not get a lot of views. I actually do think it was a good video, so I will post it in the description. But that video entailed could rogue decks actually make it this format? Prior to that video, or that video was more prior to an event that we had recently in the TCG, and that TCG event did a way higher impact to the Yu-Gi-Oh community as a whole, more than I thought it did, or more than I thought it would. For those who don't know what I'm talking about YCS Birmingham and Dihn-Kah-Bui's victory with the Fire King deck. To more of the serious players, or the more serious players in the game, this doesn't really come to a surprise. This is more so Dihn-Kah-Bui making a meta call and using his expertise and prowess as a duelist, overcoming the field more than just the deck itself being like overall just a good deck that can keep up with Ryzeal and Maliss. Right now, Ryzeal and Maliss are the two best decks. There's no debate about that. Maliss is a really bad matchup for this deck. Ryzeal is also a bad matchup because Abyss Dweller is in the format. Even though you can make the argument that this deck can just run over Dweller and just play like very passively, but we'll get more on that as the video goes on with that explanation. Dihn-Kah-Bui's win of the YCS pretty much made and cemented like a legacy into this community. It kind of shows you that if you really are passionate about the game and you really like know what you're doing, you can do well with a rogue deck. And I know that sounds corny. I know that sounds like one of those obvious things that everybody would say when it comes to like this notion, but let's think about it a little step further. Against Ryzeal, outside of Abyss Dweller, what else can the Ryzeal deck do against Fire Kings? Like, not a lot. Like, Ryzeal Detonator is not going to be enough to stop all these monsters. Some of these monsters that are getting summoned are just as big as Detonator. You have other non-engine cards that are searchable that actually like pressures your opponent into like getting rid of their entire board. Ryzeal Cross is a nifty negate, but it's not really like the biggest negate out there. When it comes to Maliss, the matchup is a little bit more strong. But if you saw my last Welcome to the Underground video, I talked about how just side decking properly against it is just going to do well. Like with 3 Dominance Impulse, 3 Fuwalos, 3 Ash Blossoms, 3 Chaos Hunters, 3 Artifact Lancia, like you have a lot of tools to deal with Maliss if you know how you're facing the matchup. The lesser hand traps like Veiler and Imperm are not as effective, but everything else, if you know what you're doing, you should be okay. Now, the thing about this, right, is that Fire King's top of that like that YCS pretty much became something significant because look at this. Literally just after Dihn-Kah-Bui won his his YCS, we've had 4 regional tops within the last week. And you can make the argument that, you know, more people got motivated to play Fire Kings, which means it was more represented, which means enough people were playing the deck yeah, to that point where enough of them will top. But the fair thing to say about this is not every single Fire King list played exactly like Dihn-Kah-Bui did. Like this one didn't main Dominus Impulse, but I know there was another one that topped with it. This one didn't play neither Bestials nor Impulse in the main. It played Ghost Ogre. And they pretty much cited the same amount of Maliss hate. Well, they cited a Meowls, which is another Maliss hate card. Which, funnily enough, is also good against the Fire King Mirror Match. This is like the Bestial. This is one with Bestials in it. That was the Dihn-Kah-Bui list. Let's see. This one is maining Impulse. So, like, outside of Extravagance and Prosperity and, like, the very specific extra deck, this one is playing Ultimate Slayer as well, which I don't think Dihn-Kah-Bui was playing. Yeah, Dihn-Kah-Bui was not playing Ultimate Slayer, so the fact that this person made it with an Ultimate Slayer in like the side deck was actually very genius. That's the first thing I want to note. This was very genius because since you have a lot of free extra deck space in the Fire King deck, you don't mind playing the cards that you need for the Ultimate Slayer. Ultimate Slayer is not amazing in game 1, but post game 1 against specifically like Ryzeal and like other decks, Ultimate Slayer is just really okay. But let's not just talk about Fire Kings, right? Let's talk about a few other decks that have been doing okay in the TCG. We have the Blue Eye structure that just came out, and literally within the first weekend of its debut, it already has 3 regional tops and 2 regional wins. Like, that's really impressive for a deck that just literally came out. Well, new support just came out, rather. Blue Eyes has been around since the beginning of the game. But yeah, this is what Blue Eyes players are doing. This one is playing Ultimate Slayer as well, which is a little bit different. But this is another Blue Eyes build. I think Primite is gonna be the way to go with Blue Eyes. It's not to say that Blue Eyes is unplayable without it. It's just to say it is the best play. It is the best way to play it. Like, these cards are pretty much foolproof for the Blue Eyes deck. But yeah, like, keep an eye on Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes is a really good contender. Let's see what other decks we can talk about. Like, for example, Memento has been doing very good. Like 7 regional tops, like in this current format. That's not that bad. Obviously, we're not gonna talk about Stun or Centurion or Goblin Biker. I want to talk about this Orcus player for a second. Creighton Pre. He topped 2 regionals in a row with the same deck. And not just the same deck, it was the same list. I think the only change was the side deck a little bit. But outside of that, this very same main deck topped 2 regionals in a row. Which is really impressive because we don't even have the OCG support for Orcust yet. And as you can see here, prior to Alliance Insight, Orcust was actually doing very well. Like, it was doing better than Maliss and was doing better than like Ryzeal and Blue Eyes. So I don't think this is a fluke. I do actually wholeheartedly believe that Orcust is not a bad deck right now. It just mainly comes from whoever is deck building it to just be prepared for like the current format. I think this deck is just as good as Fire Kings, like in the right hands. What other decks I can talk about real quick? So I want to talk about this Ice Barrier deck real quick. I think the same goes for Mermaid Lantian. Well, at least some builds. But you're probably thinking, well, ice barriers probably didn't do like it's not justified. It's just a one-trick pony, and like it cannot do a lot of things for this current format. I'm gonna show you something real quick. The other day at locals, shout outs to Samuel. He was playing against me with his Sword Soul Tenyi deck, and he made an end board involving Chaos Angel and Ice Jade Grimmer Agerine. This card is really, really, really good against Maliss. Like, there are not that many cards in Maliss deck that can actually beat this card. For those who don't know what this card is, I'll read the effect for you. It says, you can activate this effect. Face-up monsters you control cannot be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects this turn. Then, if you activated this effect in response to your opponent's card or effect activation, and your opponent has a card with that name on their field or graveyard, you can banish those cards. If a card is banished by your opponent's card effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. Yeah, this card's really strong. Like, the fact that you cannot remove it by normal means is already really strong. The fact that it protects you from cards like the Hearts of Cryptor, it protects you from like MTP07. Yeah, this is a problem. This is a problem. And adding to that, like, you see this Metal Tronus in my hand? This Metal Tronus is useless. Like, name me a 3000 attack water aqua monster that is playable to this day. Like in the Maliss deck, or like in any deck this format. Like, the first card I thought about when I saw the Ice Jade and the typing was Tearlaments Rokalos. And we haven't seen Tearlaments in a while. So yeah, there are not that many cards that can actually stop this. Like, at least in the Maliss deck. So that's like just showing you that if you know what you're doing in this format, you should be okay. Let's talk about White Forest. So right after the two tops in it topped YCS Birmingham, and in the same like a few days after, it topped I think it was a remote YCS that happened like around the same week. After these tops, you have a top 8 and you have a top 4, and like you see a lot of different variants. You see Fiendsmith, you see Toys. This is playing Silhouette Rabbit. But again, we're just going to go back to like we talked about earlier. Like, yes, Ryzeal and Maliss are way better than this deck at the current moment. However, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, Ultimate Slayer is really good against like Ryzeal already. Against Maliss, you're going to have a tough time on game 1. But you have 3 Lancia, you have Sanctum. You know, you do have tools that can actually deal with it. And the thing about White Forest is, post-Alliance Insight, this deck is going to get scarier. This deck will be eventually tier 1. I can assure you that for now. So, let's look at the OCG prior to Alliance Insight. This was in a format right between the Forbidden Limited list and Alliance Insight. And this is something that happened during one of the weekends. Orchest and Blue Eyes were dominating like this past weekend. And that's not to say that Maliss and Ryzeal like got completely faded out. They stayed around. They were just trying to figure out how to build their like decks properly with the new adjustments prior to Alliance Insight. But look at Memento and look at White Forest. They are both literally right around the corner next to these two decks. And you have a lot of other decks that were doing okay, like Crystal was doing okay. We don't talk about Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes is different in the OCG than in the TCG. Tenpai Dragons is one of those decks that you know are going to do super well always. Let me show you stuff that happened after Alliance Insight, or around the same weekend. This was a City Duel tournament. For those who don't know, City Duel are they're like the bridge. They're basically like the opens that we get in the TCG. It's like that mix between what is a regional and a YCS. And yes, this one was won by Maliss, but look at the other decks that were literally right next to Maliss and could have had a chance of winning. You see the White Forest as a Snake Eye deck, which again, we cannot adapt it the same way because they do have original simple spoils. You have Labyrinth. What was the last time you saw Labyrinth? Like, I don't think we've seen Labyrinth like in a while. Like even on Rage of the Abyss format. Here you have Trap Tricks. Like, surprisingly, even Trap Tricks made it that far. Like a rank 4 deck that is not named Ryzeal. This happened, I think, last weekend. Like, yep, this happened literally last weekend. And so this is post, like, Duelist Alliance format. You see that Maliss was pretty much in almost the entirety of top 4. But what won the event was Fiendsmith Orchest. And if you look at this Fiendsmith Orchest list, this looks pretty okay. This looks pretty standard. Like, you don't see anything here that's really outside of the norm. Like, you see this new spaceship monster right next to Engraver. That card does come out in Alliance Insight, so it is a really cool, nifty support card for Orchest. But, like, if you look at the extra deck, like, you see Borrelsword Dragon. Like, what was the last time you saw Borrelsword Dragon? Like, this card pretty much got power crept by Access Code Talker back in 2020. Now let's look at the side deck. You see 2 Lancias and 2 Meowls. Outside of the 2 Lancias and the 2 Meowls, there's not a lot of Maliss hate in here. I guess another Maliss hate card that I should mention is Red Reboot. We don't have this in the TCG. I really hope we don't get this in the TCG. But this card's really, really good against Maliss. Like, it shuts down their 07s, it shuts down their 06s, it shuts down the ability to use Solemn Strike, because post-side, a lot of Maliss players do side in Solemn Strike. Yeah, really good card. But this is just to show you that, like, despite the disparity of power level between Ryzeal and Maliss and everything else, I think this format is okay. I think as time goes on, people will realize that this format is not an unbeatable format. Like, Maliss and Ryzeal are beatable decks. They are way stronger than every other deck, but they are not like invincible. And but another thing I have to mention, you see how these are 5 Fire King list. There is another one. Cameron Neal also topped like last week with the deck. And they even asked him like what was his reasoning for playing Fire King like at the regional, and his words were, "This deck won an event, so I had to play it." Like, very pro player mentality. But yeah, I think it comes to no surprise that what Dihn-Kah-Bui did actually impacted the format. I think what he did just made this format a lot more playable for a lot of people. It pretty much sparked the hope of rogue players and pretty much showed them, hey, 3 structure decks and a little bit of change in the side made it this far. If you know what you're doing, you'll make it this far too. But yeah, I'm pretty much just rambling at this point. I hope you found this informative to your liking, understanding. More videos coming soon. Keep practicing and keep dueling.